Welcome to this explainer. A church can teach its children incredibly well at home and still completely lose them if what happens on Sunday morning quietly contradicts all that hard work. Today, we're moving from the home to the assembly to look at the architectural blueprint of a doctrinally sound church. Specifically, we'll be focusing on two massive load-bearing pillars from our source material, the pulpit and the door into membership.
This whole analysis really rests on a haunting command from the book of Jeremiah. It says, "Stand in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths where the good way is, and walk in it." The core idea here, true renewal isn't about innovating some flashy new program or inventing something novel. It's about recovering something ancient, something that's already been proven to work.
So let's jump straight into part 1, the drain of doctrine. To understand the structural reinforcements the source argues for, we first have to examine how the sanctuary was quietly gutted over time. If you look across 3 centuries of surviving sermons, you can actually watch the doctrine just drain right out of the pulpit. The data shows that deep, doctrinal preaching hit its peak from the 1730s all the way to the 1880s. Then, right around the late 1800s, we get the first crack, this kind of revivalist simplification. And that led to a massive, broad shallowing all through the 20th century, basically trading historical depth for modern speed and appeal. And man, the result of this shallowing is measurable, and it's stark. The data reveals that a staggering 50%, literally half of weekly attenders, do not personally engage the Bible they gather around on Sunday mornings. Think about that for a second. Half the room. When the pulpit stops carrying the doctrinal weight, the people just disconnect from the text during the week.
Even more alarming, as a real wake-up call, a quarter of church teenagers actively describe the teaching they receive as shallow. It proves a pretty undeniable point. When the pulpit drops doctrine, the people simply cannot learn it. The primary transmission belt breaks down, and the kids are the first to feel that deficit.
Which brings us to part 2, Pillar 3, the pulpit.
To restore this pillar, the scriptural charge is absolute. 2 Timothy 4:2 commands, "Preach the word, be ready in season and out of season. Convince, rebuke, exhort, with all long-suffering and teaching." Paul's own standard was completeness, right? He talked about delivering the whole counsel of God. The author connects this directly to the Nehemiah chapter 8 method. Read the text distinctly and give the sense until the people actually understand it.
So how do you rebuild this pillar today? The source lays out a really actionable blueprint. First, make your ordinary Sunday diet the systematic exposition of Scripture. Preach book by book over years rather than serving up a rotating menu of topical felt needs. Second, tackle the hard doctrines. And third, answer modern objections right from the pulpit.
When we say tackle the hard doctrines, we're talking about taking them head-on. Pastors need to directly preach about sin, judgment, atonement, the absolute authority of Scripture, and the return of Christ. Instead of, creatively preaching around them, we need to lean in. These are the heavy anchors that the historical church used to build durable believers.
Also, dealing with objections is absolutely crucial. The author points out that a congregation whose teens believe the church rejects science desperately needs a pastor who addresses origins, suffering, and doubt in the main sermon, not just hidden away in a side room or a youth group chat. It has to be central to the congregation's weekly diet.
But a strong pulpit alone isn't enough. We move to part 3, Pillar 4, guarding the door.
We have to face a really hard truth presented in the research here. Attendance is not formation. A church can hold warm bodies in the pews for years, have fantastic attendance numbers, and still completely fail to form actual disciples. Why is that? Well, the text points out that many churches have quietly gutted their membership process. We've traded years of deep doctrine for a 60-minute orientation. Today, people are often admitted with a brief welcome class, which is a massive departure from the historical standard that required a rigorous course of doctrine before anyone could officially join.
The source anchors this historical standard in the Great Commission itself. It's a teaching commission that absolutely does not stop at baptism. Matthew 28:20 says, "Teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you." You see this clearly in Acts chapter 2 with the early Jerusalem church. Doctrine was the first and continuing mark of belonging. It wasn't just an elective you took later. It was the foundation. In fact, by the 2nd and 3rd centuries, the churches had a formal name for this season of teaching and examination required before baptism, the catechumenate. It was so integral that lectures from Cyril of Jerusalem survive today as a complete course. And later on, the Reformers vigorously rebuilt this exact same structure around their catechisms. It has literally centuries of field testing.
To recover this today, the action plan insists on a few key steps. First, replace those brief orientations with a substantive new convert course, covering the gospel, the confession of faith, and the ordinances. Second, tie membership to the catechism. Joining the church should literally mean you have been taught what the church actually believes. And third, treat that instruction as ongoing, because a disciple never stops being taught.
Which leads us perfectly into part 4, watering what was planted.
Looking at these two pillars together, we see a powerful synergy of how the assembly was originally designed to function. The overarching argument is this: the pulpit feeds the gathered body with the whole counsel of God, while rigorous membership guards the door. Together, they make sure that what the parents are planting at home during the week is being deeply and intentionally watered by the church on Sunday.
Ultimately, the source warns that without these old paths, you could accidentally undo all the hard work of discipleship happening in the home. If the pulpit is shallow and the door is unguarded, the foundation crumbles. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Let me leave you with one vital, provocative question to think about today. When you look at your own assembly, is your church watering the seed that the home plants, or is it quietly washing it away?